That morning, the phone rang far too early. On the other end, the deep voice of the family lawyer sounded formal, almost detached. "Your father asked me to invite you to the will reading." For a few seconds, I stayed silent, letting the words sink in. It was strange, considering my parents and I had barely spoken in months. There hadn't been an explosive fight, just a cold, deliberate distance, as if I had quietly stopped existing for them. Why would they want me there now? I sighed and said I would come. As I hung up, a knot formed in my chest. It wasn't just curiosity. I could feel it in my bones. Something big was about to happen. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself it would just be a formality, but deep down, I knew better. On the day of the reading, I put on the best clothes I had, not out of vanity, but to show them I wasn't broken and I didn't need their pity. When I stepped into the conference room, the first thing I saw was my sister, Claire, sitting perfectly composed with that smirk she wore whenever she wanted to provoke me without saying a word. My parents sat together, motionless, not even attempting a polite greeting. The room was silent, the only sound the steady tick of the wall clock. I looked at each of them, trying to read their faces, but all I saw was a wall of closed expressions. I sat down and waited. Something was coming, and it didn't feel good. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder stuffed with papers. "According to the expressed wishes of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," he began, his tone professional and neutral. I kept my eyes fixed on him, waiting to hear my name, waiting for some proof that I still had a place in that family. But the next words hit me like a punch to the gut. "All assets, including the family home, properties, and financial accounts, will be transferred to Claire Thompson." It was like the ground had dropped out from under me. I looked around the room, searching for any sign of surprise, but there was none. Claire's smirk hadn't moved. My parents just stared at me, emotionless. Before I could even process the blow, my mother leaned forward slightly and, with a coldness I'll never forget, said, "You've never been responsible enough to take care of anything we own." That cut deeper than being written out of the will. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about their judgment, their dismissal of who I was. My face burned, anger rising fast, but I swallowed it down. Losing my temper would be exactly what they wanted. If I stayed calm, I kept the power. So I took a slow breath, lowered my eyes, and let them think they had won. What they didn't know was that years earlier, when my father was about to lose the house to a late mortgage, I was the one who paid off almost the entire debt. I had used years of savings from my own work, and at the time, my father had been grateful enough to sign a document acknowledging that the house was, in fact, mine. I kept that paper like insurance for the future, never imagining I'd need it this way. But at that moment, I realized it was my ace in the hole. And I had come prepared. Just last week, I'd had it officially certified and tucked it into an envelope, ready for the right moment. When the lawyer closed his folder and said, "That concludes the reading of the will," I stood slowly. I could feel every eye in the room on me. Keeping my tone steady, I said, "I think you'll want to see this before we finish." I walked to the table and slid the envelope toward him. The lawyer frowned slightly as he opened it. My parents exchanged a quick glance, and Claire raised an impatient eyebrow. He read the contents silently, but with each line his expression changed. Finally, he looked up and said, "This changes everything." The air in the room shifted instantly. Claire was the first to break the silence, jumping to her feet. "This is fake. He made this up," she shouted. Without raising his voice, the lawyer replied, "This document is registered and authenticated. It's no invention." My parents stayed frozen, as if they'd been blindsided. My father's head dropped, my mother's face went pale. For the first time, they had nothing to say. I could feel the balance of power tipping. I had the truth, and more importantly, I had proof. The lawyer went on to explain that, legally, the house was no longer part of the inheritance. The signed document had transferred ownership to me years ago. There was no room for dispute. Claire tried to interrupt, raising her voice, waving her arms, but every objection was dismantled by solid legal facts. I just sat there, watching. I didn't smile, didn't celebrate, didn't rub it in. My silence was my victory. When the explanation was done, I closed my folder and simply said, "I just wanted it to be fair." As I walked toward the door, I could hear Claire's voice rising behind me. "You promised me everything!" she shouted at our parents. My father's voice was low, tired. "We didn't think he'd have proof." I kept walking, not looking back. I realized in that moment that I didn't need anything from them anymore. Not their approval, not their excuses. Justice had been served my way. The next day, the lawyer called to confirm that the transfer of the house title was already in motion. I sat in my kitchen, looking out the window, and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. A few weeks later, I agreed to meet my parents for coffee. They tried to explain, saying they thought I'd be fine without anything. I looked them straight in the eyes and said, "You taught me that justice is built on proof, not promises." Then I went back home, walking through the rooms I had saved all those years ago. The house was quieter now, no false smiles, no shallow visits, but it had something far more valuable. It was mine, truly mine, and it always would be. Life has a strange way of revealing the truth in moments we least expect. Sometimes it comes quietly, without warning, like a phone call on an ordinary morning. And sometimes, the people we believe should protect us, guide us, and stand beside us are the very ones who test us the most. This story was about an inheritance, yes, but at its heart, it was about something far more universal: respect, dignity, and the unshakable belief that our worth is not defined by what others give us, but by what we've built with our own hands. In our everyday lives, the setting may be different: an office, a friendship, a relationship, but the lesson is the same. We all encounter moments where we're overlooked, underestimated, or told we're not enough. It might be a boss who fails to see your effort, a friend who takes you for granted, or a family member who assumes you'll never stand up for yourself. In those moments, anger feels like the easiest response. But anger burns quickly and leaves us empty. What truly endures is quiet strength, preparing your truth, holding on to your integrity, and waiting for the right moment to let your actions speak louder than your emotions. Patience doesn't mean doing nothing. It means working silently, building your case, strengthening yourself, and refusing to compromise who you are just to win a momentary fight. And when that moment comes, when the door finally opens for you to stand tall, you don't need to shout or humiliate. You simply present the truth, and the truth does the rest. That's the kind of victory that lasts. Not because you defeated someone else, but because you proved to yourself that you could face injustice without losing your character. This story reminds us that justice is rarely immediate. It takes time, and it often requires us to walk alone for a while. But when we choose dignity over rage, preparation over impulse, we win in a way no one can take from us. And maybe, just maybe, we also inspire someone else to believe they can do the same. Thank you for staying with me through every moment of this story. If it touched something in you, if it reminded you of your own battles and the quiet strength you carry, please share it. Someone you know might be standing on the edge of giving up, and your act of sharing could be the spark they need to keep going. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you won't miss the next story, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that the truth, no matter how long it takes, is always worth standing for. Together, we'll keep telling stories that remind us of who we are, and who we can be when we refuse to back down.